Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Paradigm Shift. Today, we are in conversation with Dr. Malini Shankar. She is the Vice Chancellor of International Maritime University. Welcome, Dr. Warm welcome, Dr. Malini Sharma. I think, Shankar, sorry, I think your mic is off. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Deepshika. And it's thank you for inviting me. And this is the Indian Maritime University. So just not the international one. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just going to read out a little bit from your beautiful, illustrious achievements, professional, and this. Let me just read this out to you, to our viewers. Bureaucrats provide the steel frame of the administration of the country. Today, we are proudly in conversation with Malini Shankar, a career bureaucrat belonging to the 1984 batch of the Indian Administrative Services. Dr. Malini V Shankar, she's had an illustrious career spanning over 3.5 decades. She's currently the Vice Chancellor of Indian Maritime University and also the Chairperson of the National Shipping Board, Government of India. Dr. Shankar has obtained her doctoral degree in institutional economics from IIT Madras, management degree from Asian Institute of Management, Manila. She also holds a master's degree in chemistry from Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts, USA. She's had her professional mid-career training at IIAP in Paris, IIAP in Paris, from where she obtained a diploma in international economics. A large part of her IIS senior career at her senior level was spent in water sector, that is municipal, irrigation, environment, and the economic sectors such as power, commerce and industry and shipping. Dr. Shankar is the recipient of several academic awards for her professional achievements. She is the first Indian woman to be awarded the Distinguished Alumni AAA Award 2020 by her alma mater, the Asian Institute of Management, Manila, Philippines. She has been invited by academic and professional organizations to contribute to policy making and represented India in the international forum. Dr. Shankar serves as an honorary member of the board of directors of the World Maritime University, Malmo, Sweden, nominated by the International Maritime Organization. Welcome, and we're going to have a great conversation with this great personality. How are you this evening?
Pretty good. It's nice balmy weather out here, fortunately. Yeah.
How nice. How nice. So let's get right into it. Doctor, I want to know what were your early days like? I want to know what kind of a childhood happens to an IS officer in the making.
I think, first of all, I think IAS officers come from different walks of life. But as far as my childhood goes, it was a normal childhood in the middle class family. My father was a scientist, having got his doctorate in physics, and he was doing research in textile physics. He had got his doctorate from Sorbonne, so he was quite deep into science. My
Okay.
mother had a master's degree in Sanskrit, and she was teaching for a few years before she decided to become a homemaker. So I grew
Okay.
up with this two different streams at home. One part science and one part languages, and all that comes with it, the culture, etc. Fairly
Right.
traditional home. I grew up in Madras, the then Madras, which is now Chennai, and
Okay.
Madras, about 50 years ago, was it's not the same as today. It was pretty much considered, a small
Right.
town where everybody knew everybody else.
Okay.
One aspect of growing up in Madras was that a lot of emphasis was in the middle class families was laid on two things. One was your education, and in
Yes.
education is particularly science and language. Get your maths and language right, and you'll get everything else right. And,
Right.
and the other part was culture. The area that I grew in, you had to be immersed in something cultural, whether it is, learning to play a musical instrument or learning to sing classical music, or at least being exposed to these things.
Right.
Madras also those days allowed you to get into sports even for a girl. I mean, it was not
Okay.
taboo like many parts, So you dabbled in everything. And I think it's
Hmm.
the extracurricular activities that go to make your personality. Absolutely. So
Right.
that's the background. And let me tell you that there is no one in the household who is in the civil service, hardly anybody in government service. So I'm the only person, I think. I mean, but for one or two, distant uncles who got into railways. So that
Okay.
was the maximum. And in fact, when I was writing the UPSC exams, I remember my aunt saying, get into railways, you will get a very nice quarters. And then I would say, oh no, but there is too much of suit in the quarters because those were steam engine days. So I don't think I want to live near the suit. So
Oh my God.
yeah, so I wanted to study abroad. Uh, uh, then my father said, well, I don't think we have the money. If you get a scholarship, maybe. So I got a
Hmm.
scholarship. Then he said,
Wow.
full scholarship, everything paid for. But then he said, okay, now I don't think we have even the money to buy the air ticket. See, I finished my school at 14, my graduation at 18. So
Wow.
here I was barely 20 and wanting to go, and this was in 1980,
Hmm.
no internet,
Yeah.
no, STD or
Right.
ISD calls. You have to
Right.
depend on the aerograms every 15 days. You write a letter to just tell your parents you're alive and kicking. So then I applied for some scholarships, and there was this one trust in Mumbai which said, they were giving scholarships only for uh, tuition fees. So I appeared. My father was nice enough to bring me to Mumbai and said, "Okay, attend the interview." There were six big
Uh,
people, and the first time I was
wow.
out of Mumbai and facing these
Hello.
six people, in, and they said, "Okay, which college?"
Okay.
I gave them all the details, and they said, "Do you know we give scholarships only uh, for studies for your tuition fee, and you seem to have a full scholarship." So I told them that my
Okay.
father says he doesn't have money for the airfare. I'm not sure he's telling the truth, but he's, we're talking about 1980, and every single penny counted.
Yes.
So this
Yes.
person, fortunately, there is destiny in life. This person had gone to this college, Mount Holyoke College, the previous year. He says, have you been to that college? Have you seen it? I said, no, I've never been abroad. So he said, it's such a beautiful college. I don't want to deprive you of the, studying there or being there. He says, I'm going to change the rule and give you the money for the airfare. And that's how I landed there.
Wow.
And then, so there I was doing, beautiful studies in science and doing very well. And one fine day, and then while I was there, my father got a visiting scientist post in the US. So he landed there, and I told him, but I'm going back to India. So he said, he doesn't know what to make of me. He said, why are you going back to India? I said, no, somewhere down the line, I wanted to write the civil service exam. And because I kept getting these scholarships and kept moving up in studies, I never really got a chance. There's an upper age limit to appearing for the UPSC exam. So I think I'm going to give
Okay.
it one try. So my
Okay.
parents were in the US. I came down to my grandmother in Chennai, still
Okay.
Madras then, and never regretted it. Got in the first attempt and never
Wow.
regretted it. And
Um,
something more interesting was when I had to choose the subjects for the UPSC exam. You had to choose
right.
two main subjects. One, of course,
Right.
was chemistry because that was my major in college. A very tough
Okay.
one to take in the UPSC. The other one
Yes.
I chose was French literature. So,
Wow.
yeah, my father said, he calls me, he said, you know what you're doing. I've done my studies, my doctorate in France, but I don't think I can attempt literature, and I hope you're not depending on me. I said, no, 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 I'll just do it. That's
Huh.
where I got the highest marks, Deepshika, and that's what got me into service. So, very interesting trajectory, actually.
That was amazing. That was going to be my next question. You've done your economics, your international economics, and then chemistry, management and chemistry. This is like an interestingly rare combination of subjects. And now you said French literature. So how do you, get this, all of
Yeah,
this together?
I think it just see in school and for those who are listening, the youngsters, I don't know present day schools, But those days, it's, the school which kind of influenced your thinking as to what you should do in college. It's not so much, somebody
Mm.
telling you have to do medicine or you have to do engineering. If my parents had it their way, my father would have liked me to be a scientist and my mother would have liked me to be a doctor. Let's be,
Okay.
I mean, parents were parents no matter which
Yes.
generation. And
Yes.
if the teacher, I didn't want to do medicine for sure. Science, yes, I went on. But
Okay.
there's a teacher the chemistry teacher in school was very a determinant factor in my doing chemistry. And the way she
Okay.
taught it and the way she brought chemistry to life for us, full of color, full of time, very dynamic. So I kept doing it, but then I realized that if once I got into civil service, the chemistry was, well, it gives you a scientific temper, it gives you an analytical skill. For example, I could write if they said your paper, your answer has to be in 200 words. Being a science student, you can't write more than that. And then there was this French literature where I had to write 3,000 words in French for one essay. So,
Oh.
so you
Mm.
but I went to a school, and this is where the schooling becomes important, or your mentors become
Right.
important. That it
Absolutely.
was an approach to learning rather than something that you are imbibing for an exam. So you could
Right.
take any of us who went to that school can take any subject and say, okay, I will dissect it, I will analyze it, and this is my approach to conceptual thinking. So once you
Right.
have your concepts very clear, it doesn't matter
Right.
which subject you're handling.
Right.
So this
Absolutely. That is
is
so. I hope my chemistry teacher is not watching, because I can't say whatever you said about your chemistry teacher about her, because I used to suck at chemistry.
well, that's it. It's your innate interest, what you connect to, plus the teacher's, methodology
Yes.
of reaching out to you and connecting with you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I
It's
think
so true what you just said.
but if you have an interest and you have your concepts right, I think you can do in any subject. It's
Right,
up to you.
absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us about, this is going to be for all the young viewers who are appearing for the UPSC exams. Like, it is tough. So how many hours did you put in? How did you prepare for this? Like you just said, you were with your grandmom, and how many
Yeah.
hours of studies and how many papers and past papers, and how did you prepare for the interview and the exam?
Okay. I'm going to tell what I did, but I don't think it's going to work for too many people. I was just plain lucky also.
Okay.
I came back just 1 month before the preliminary exams. I came back from the US. So I went to
Okay.
my father's friend who was in the civil service. And I
Okay.
said, Uncle, what do I do? He says, listen, I knew you were coming. So go to the garage. I've kept the back papers, newspapers, back issues of newspapers of the last 6 months. One
Okay.
issued in Delhi and one issued in Madras. Take them
Huh.
and read them like the textbook. That
Wow.
was to make up for the lost time, because remember, there was no internet those days. So you were not really, really up to date on what's happening in India, what are the trends in India,
Right.
what's the trends in economy, culture, nothing. And
Absolutely.
also remember that you were a student, so you could not really subscribe to any newspaper from India. It's very, very
Yes.
expensive. So that's
Yes.
where I started. The second thing
Wow.
was NCERT books. No matter which subject you take, basic conceptual, grasp of every subject. I mean, I had to. I remember the toughest one that I had to do was commerce, 10th standard
Okay.
commerce textbook, because I
Okay.
needed to know that there is a debit and a credit. You do chemistry, you don't know what's a debit, you don't know what's a credit. You know everything about reactions. Um,
Right.
Something that I was very bad about and didn't know the A to ABC of it was economics. And to think
Okay.
that I went on to do economics, I mean, so, but yeah, the 12th standard textbook in economics. So NCRT books, newspapers, these are the basics. A healthy interest in everything around you. Civics, which is one of the worst taught subjects in schools, any school for
Absolutely.
that matter. But that's the essence of what you have to know about the country. And,
Right.
and if you read, for example, I would suggest that people preparing for the exams should read newspapers like not Times of India, Times of India, if anybody is associated with it, should excuse me, but that's not a UPSC oriented newspaper. I would suggest Hindu. I would suggest the Indian Express Mumbai edition, but most of all, something like Business Standard, which gives you policy insights. Newspaper
Okay.
reading is a must, must, must. I put
Okay.
in barely 4 hours of study a day. Okay.
Wow.
And that was just for 4 months. But it was, the amount of concentration I had, I was good and excellent at taking notes. So you read something, you paraphrase it, you write it in your own words, you don't forget it. You do it twice, then you don't forget it.
Wow.
I thought that if I put in too many hours a day, I will just have a burnout. I'll get fed up. So this is again in Madras. Half the time the electricity was down those days. The heat was
Oh,
really searing heat in the month of
right.
May, June, July. So I would
Right.
actually go to a library, which sometimes it would be the British Council, sometimes it would be the USIS library, and sit there and peacefully. So if you go to this library situation, the environment is so good that what you can imbibe, what you can grasp in 2 hours, it's going to take you much double or triple the time if you're sitting at home and studying. No matter which,
Correct.
the mother feeding you coffee and tea, and which I didn't have that luxury. Nobody was giving me anything. Remember, my parents were abroad, so it was
Very
all good.
true.
But the library made up for it. Okay, so
Right.
and then I would just get up, and this is Madras again. I told you culture is a part of it. When I got bored, I'll say, okay, take the bicycle, and then just go and attend a very beautiful classical music program or classical dance
Wow.
program. Just let go. So I think
De-stress.
de-stress, these things help. But I think for most people, 4 hours would not be enough. It depends on what
Right.
is how much of conceptual grasp you have, how much of a worldview you have, how much, for example, you should read even Economic and Political Weekly or the Hindu publication, which is Frontline. These are very heavy publications. But if you can sit in a library and grasp it immediately, it's perfectly, you need less number of hours. I still
Correct.
remember I couldn't figure out what the economics was from the textbook. So I
Hmm.
still remember Deepshika sitting in the USIS. Ronald Reagan was the president of the US. He said,
Okay.
and I was watching his tapes, and
Huh.
he explained inflation, believe it or not. It stuck in my mind. Today, the equivalent would be YouTube and podcasts and things like that.
Right.
And
Right.
surprisingly enough, that what I watched on that, on that tape of Ronald
Right.
Reagan's speech on inflation
Right.
actually
Right.
came in the exam. There was a
Wow.
question. There was a question. Right? Explain how inflation affects the country or something like that.
Okay. Okay.
Or the relationship between GDP and inflation. I think all that I remember is what Ronald Reagan spoke of all people, and he was not the most intellectual person. Excuse me again. So you learn from everybody. It's just don't run down anybody. You can learn from anywhere. You don't
Absolutely.
know what gets into your mind, what sticks to your mind.
Right. Absolutely, that is so true. And what you said about burnout, that is so important because children these days are studying, I think, 24 hours out of
Yeah,
24 hours. And what you said was very true. Yeah, okay, 4 hours is too less, I think.
I think 4 hours
But
is too less, maybe 6 to 7 hours. And with a break, either, take your interest in music, or I would say better is sports. Go play a game, come back, so your energy your blood is circulating, and you say, okay, I've done that, now I'll get back to this.
studying, that is
And,
such
and,
good
and
advice.
then we also didn't have distractions. There was no cell phone, there was no television. There was no television. Television was
Right.
there, but it was, black and white, pre-Asiad,
Doordarshan.
Asia.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I mean, it was not much of a diversion.
Yeah, yeah. There was just one show on prime time.
Correct. And Chitrahar, that was
Chitrahar. Yeah, yeah,
Chitrahar was the highlight. But going and seeing a film, for example, a funny film,
yeah.
that could
Right.
also, de-stress.
Right. Absolutely. So, I read a quote somewhere which said, this was when I was researching IS officers. So it said, it was a meme kind of a thing that he was an IS officer and they asked her, "Can you cook?" So I just wanted to know, dare I ask you this? Were you asked this question?
But asked by whom?
when you are in a marriage perspective,
Oh,
prospect.
no, 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 no. I fortunately married into a very enlightened family, and all the
Okay,
sisters, all the daughters of the family were already working. They were elder to my husband. They are
okay.
elder to my husband, and they were teaching. They were all of them in the teaching field. So I
Hmm.
was not asked anything except that yes, I told my husband upfront, husband to be upfront that I can't cook. My mother never taught me to cook, and there were mother and grandmother in the family. So he very beautifully said, don't worry, we'll get a cook." And I don't think I knew the basic cooking, survival cooking, but it's a
Huh.
pandemic. So if somebody asked me, what did you achieve in the pandemic? I learned to cook, and I learned to cook what my grandmother cooked. No fancy food, but what my grandmother cooked was fancy enough for me.
Absolutely. I know I am like just like you, I can do survival cooking, but I was like master chef. I felt like master chef during this pandemic. I was like Googling everything and I was making everything. But yes, I think we all did and we all put on weight.
No, I lost weight. That's the
Yes, I
other
did.
thing.
Yes, I lost weight because I had to do all the housework also. But yes.
Work also, but there was one more thing that if you're eating um, pure home cooked food, you don't. I learned that you don't put on weight.
No,
Oh,
I lost weight because I had to do everything, cleaning, and you
yeah.
never got a chance to sit
No,
down.
I was doing
And
the
then
same thing, but I also think that another contributory factor was the fact that you were eating your own, what's
clean
cooked at
food.
home, good oil, good ghee, good
Yes, yes,
vegetables. Yeah.
right. So basically, my father once told me that the country runs functions because of the bureaucrats. And you probably had to report to people who are less educated, less able than you are. So how did you handle this? And were you frustrated at times? How was the pressure, and how did you feel?
Okay. Regarding the less educated part, I have something to share. It was during my year of training when I was a trainee officer. This is your year of 2 years of probation in the service, and you are exposed to a lot of things in government. So we had something called a parliamentary attachment, where you actually go into the parliament, you sit in the parliament, and you're not watching the live parliament, but you're actually with the officers of the parliament who interact with you. So I remember a question being asked at that time saying, is it fair that, everybody is so educated and then you have elected representatives who need not even go beyond fourth class? And the answer
Right.
given, and I think it holds true even today, is
Yes.
that the elected representative is not elected for the intellectual expertise or grandeur, but he's elected because he or she has the pulse of the people. And
Okay.
if you understand that, and it's a pulse of the majority in a democracy, it may not,
Okay.
he or she, the elected representative, will know the pulse of the minority too, but then it's a
Right.
majority which rules. So once you put that in your mind, yes, there are issues, but then if you put this, if you have this in the background, you are less supercilious, and you're less presumptuous about certain things. But
Right.
as you rise up the ladder in the initial years, I remember the person who trained me, the officer who trained me, telling me, please do not look at them as us and them. you know so it's also who you mentor, who are your first bosses, which make a difference. And I was mortified of the politicians. I was not best suited to deal with them till the end of my career, but at least the
Okay.
first stage itself, this person told me, this officer was training me, said it's not us versus them. They are part of us, we are part of them, and we are like two
Wow.
wheels of the bicycle or four wheels of the vehicle, and we have to do it together. So having said that, um, politicians come in all shapes and sizes, but remember, so do officers, so do
Right.
the general public. So you got
Okay.
your ups when people, political leaders have supported me. You got your downs, but by and large, I think I stuck to my work. I said, this is what it is, and they understood me. I think they are more mature than the officers. They are more mature than the others. They understand your intent, you know.
Right,
But yes,
right.
there have been skirmishes, and there's been friction. But you just have to sail through it, and knowing that
Wow.
it's the look at the larger picture. Are you interested in helping the people? Because your focus is how do my actions benefit the people, irrespective of the bosses, whether political or officers. And you will find in closed room conversations, you will find people saying that the bureaucratic bosses are sometimes more difficult to handle than the political bosses. So you
Right.
you have all kinds. Yeah.
Yes, that is the paradigm shift right here. I mean, the way you've explained it and the way that you imbibed what this person told you, that is amazing. That is actually a shift and amazing, and how you could work through that. And, it's so beautifully said.
Thank
So,
you.
you have a large part of your career, IS career, was you were involved in the water and commerce sector. So, were there any interesting changes that you remember that you implemented that are reaping benefits now?
Okay, one interesting thing about my being in water, and that was not my choosing. IS officers are posted by the government. You can have short postings as short as 6 to 8 months. Sometimes you can have long postings. But as my career went, very interesting.
Yes,
I was secretary, principal secretary, or heading the water supplies department, which
right,
is drinking
right.
water, the municipal water that comes out of the tap. My next
Yeah,
posting was irrigation, which was the water that flows in the river. Next was, it was a sequence. And next
mm,
was, environment, which was the lakes, and then shipping, which was the sea. So I literally went from the tap to the sea. I have a pretty much a 360-degree view of water. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So there's several things that one implements over a course of time. Um, the last one, let me start with the shipping, because that was my last posting in government.
Yes,
There were two
yes,
projects that I took up, very, very interesting projects. If you look at the islands of Lakshadweep, they are
yes.
natural swimmers, they're natural, seafarers, but they do
Okay,
not have the certificates to get them a job. So, and both Andamans and Lakshadweep, these islands depend on shipping for their livelihood. They depend on
okay,
shipping for goods to be carried. There are no roads, inter-island roads. There are no inter-island, air services. So the shipping is a lifeline of both these islands. So I decided to go there and see for myself what it looks like, and I found that they have the skill, but they don't have the certificates. So we mounted, with the help of my team in the Directorate General of Shipping, we did a training in situ on site in the islands,
wow.
so that they could get those certificates, which are given by the government directly, free of cost. We said we'll not charge you. And there was tremendous support, not only from my office but also from the local member of parliament, and it was very fulfilling for us. So, and the second
Wow.
thing is, um, there is something called a cluster program mounted by the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises. And very
Okay.
few states know about it. And if you're looking at, we're talking about paradigm shift, for example. I was Commissioner of Industries in the government of Maharashtra. And
Yes.
uh, one day I got a call from the Additional Secretary Government of India, who was in Mumbai, and he told me, "Hey girl, can you come and see me in this place? I'm in a conference." So I said, "Sure, sir." I went all the way, and then he told me, "You think you're working for the most industrialized state in the country?" I wasn't sure whether I should say yes, no, all right. I didn't know where it was coming from. And he said,
Hmm.
"Do you know, Maharashtra claims to be number one in industry, and we have this program of cluster, and there is zero interest in Maharashtra, and the money has and the programs have been taken. There's no quota for any state. The programs have been taken by XYZ other states." That was, I came back and I said, okay, drop everything. We're just doing clusters. Okay. And we went
Wow.
within a year and a half from zero to the top position. We had about 53 clusters. Uh, so this was a paradigm shift in my mind. And even in the office, they were all so energized, saying, why didn't we do this before? Because this is a program in which you can see results in 1 or 2 years, rather than in government. Many of the programs are, you do something, you don't know when the results come, and
Right.
what the results
Right.
would be. So
Right.
based on this, I said, let's do a maritime cluster in Goa,
Right.
because Goa, I saw there were a lot of Goa, there were a lot of shipyards, small shipyards in Goa, and people told me, no, if you can get this done in Goa, we'll give you an award. But again, the team, took up the challenge, and over a period of time, everybody's followed up, and today there is a maritime cluster in Goa for which government of Goa is also giving support. So I'm
Right.
just giving you two examples. So on every assignment that you have, you try to do something that will make a difference to the people and satisfaction to
Right.
yourself.
Amazing. That is so good. That is so well done. Especially what you achieved in Lakshadweep. I think that must have really helped the locals, right? That people must have been really,
Very
really happy.
satisfying. Yes, they were very
Very
happy. They
satisfying.
treated me like royalty when I visited a second time, with my team to do the training.
Wow.
There were these regatta kind of boats which took me from the ship to the shore.
Yes. Oh,
Quite an
wow.
experience, yeah.
That was so in these sectors from then, like you must be which year are we talking about in the water and commerce sector and now? Have you seen any lot of paradigm shifts like in environment and irrigation and shipping? I mean, from then and now, do you see a lot of change?
You do change. You do see a change. It's very slow in government. It's not something from overnight changes. But yes,
Right.
there have been a lot of changes. For example, even the government drives the changes. The ease of doing business doesn't come overnight, because we've been such a control and command and control economy for decades. So to say that
Right.
I will become a facilitative economy, and the officers will move from controllers to facilitators is not an overnight change, but that's
Right.
happening. Definitely happening.
Okay. That is so good. So, Doctor, you've gone from different assignments, different fields, like we spoke about, from the from irrigation to shipping to the. So, how do you prepare as an IS officer? How do you prepare for your different assignments, your role? How do you prepare yourself?
See, I think your initial years when you are shifted, what we call transferred every 2 years, then you get used to the fact that I go to a new department and I've got maximum 2 months honeymoon period or a learning period where you just go deep dive, talk to your officers and find out what's there. But having said that, what is the role of an IS officer? You are a manager. You are not a technical expert. There are technical experts within the department. So if it is going, there are engineers, there are doctors, there are geologists, you have technical experts. So the job of the IS officer is like the CEO of the company. The most important things being, what we call establishment matters, which are in the private sector called HR matters. So you
Okay,
have to take care of the people who work for you, their
right.
salaries, their promotions, their increments, etc. The second thing, and more important than that, they will tell you is the budget. So the
Okay,
budget of the department, getting it passed in the legislature, and then
right.
ensuring that the financial canons are followed. And the third is the program part of it, which is each ministry or department will have schemes and programs that have to be implemented. So your job is to ensure that it is implemented in letter and in spirit. Course correction is taken, concurrent monitoring as well as final monitoring. So these are the principles on which you operate. So once you
Right.
understood principles, even when you move from one ministry or one department to another, you apply the principles. The only part three changes, your programs. So you have to,
Yeah.
the deeper you understand a program, the better you can monitor it and implement it.
Okay.
And of course,
Oh,
very important part of it is assistance. When you're called secretary to the government, you're not secretary to the minister. You're secretary to the government. That is secretary to the legislature. You're helping the minister, face the legislature. So that's a very important point. So when you
mm,
ask me about the minister, as you grow up, as you become more senior, you realize that it's the minister who is responsible for answering the queries raised in the floor of the parliament or the legislature. So that gives you this responsibility that whatever he or she is the person defending it. So they have
right.
their role and you have your role.
Roles. amazing. Brilliant. That is brilliant. Okay, so we'll come to your present role, which is the Vice Chancellor of IMU. My father, he passed out from DMET in 1964, and the shipping was making very good progress then, and jobs were being offered at the campus and all that. And so, with subsequent visits, one notices that the jobs, things are kind of going low. Shipping is slow all over. So, do you have any plans for improvement or anything in the pipeline?
Now, I would like to put certain things in perspective. Up until the late 1990s, there were only 4 or 5 institutions in India which were offering training or education in, let's say, nautical science, marine engineering, and related areas, preparing the seafarers to be either officers or deck, the people, etc. Now, around the mid 90s to late 90s, the shipping and trade, probably because of the formation of the World Trade Organization, the opening up of the Indian economy, it expanded so much that there was a need for more and more seafarers. So
Super.
the field was opened up to private enterprises to set up, maritime training institutions. So we
Okay.
went in the mid 90s or late, I think it was 1997, 98, around that time, we went from 5 to when I was Director General of Shipping in 2016-17, we had about 180. So you see the number of people being trained goes multiple, I mean, just multiple
Yes.
times. That's a
Yes.
number that we are using. So if
Right.
when you say shipping is going down, the trade, that is dependent. It's a derived demand. So if the trade closes up, you will not have much demand for
Yes.
ships or seafarers. But if the trade
Right.
goes, but having said that, you see the number of people we are training today is multiple times. It's in lakhs now. Okay, so
Yes.
that's number one. Number two is, again, it is a myth to say that the employment is going down, because just between 2016, when we started collecting the data, people do have to look at the data, and it's data based, evidence based policies are just a recent phenomena in India. So
Hmm.
between 2016 and 18, we took the data and we found it actually doubled. So it was about 1.2 lakh seafarers before 2016, and by 2018-19 we had 2.25 lakh active seafarers. Okay. Now, when we say active, that the seafarer has signed on or has gone at least once aboard a ship during the previous year, and we go between number 2, number 3, number 4.
Yeah.
Number one is China, Philippines. Number one is Philippines. They're by and large
Yes.
number one, and
Yes.
that's going to be our goal. It's a long way, but we are working on based on feedback that we get regarding what are the drawbacks, what are the deficiencies in the Indian training or Indian seafarers. We are trying to work on that. I'd not like to say what are the deficiencies, because that will be focusing on the negatives rather than,
Yes.
yes, we are aware of what are the challenges and we try to overcome that. But having said that, Deepshika, one of the common uh, feedback that we get, not limited to shipping, but I've been getting for the last 20 years consistently, is what is the employability of our graduates. Okay, it's not unemployment which is as critical as the employability, because you
Okay.
increase the employability, um, and that's a tall task across sectors, because in
Right.
Indian education, we've got used to attending classes, writing exams, and getting the degree. And I
Right.
have heard children telling me, students who passed their board exam, if you ask them any question, they say, but auntie, that was long time ago. How long was it ago? 15 days ago. So that means, it's not gone, you've not internalized it. And that's what I meant by, you have to have the conceptual skill to internalize
Right.
it and hold that concept for lifetime. So that
Right.
increases your employability. Your reading,
Yes.
reading stops when you finish the exams. After that, you read only Wikipedia and Google. But you have to continue, continue with serious reading, which will prepare you for better jobs. You will.
Right.
My theory, I have a theory that 15% of any college student is so good that they get multiple job offers. So, and
Wow.
15% of the colleges in India are excellent. So you have to get that 15% increase to 20, 25%, etc. But each individual has to put their might. It's not competition alone. It is your internal, what shall I say? As I said, substance and your
Yes.
confidence, your
Right.
communication. All these
Right.
are important. Sometimes these cannot be learnt in a classroom. You just have to observe. You have to meet people. Like they say, if you talk issues, then you are a better
Yeah.
person than talking about people. Yeah.
Absolutely, that is so true because my husband has, he's into a shipping industry, and when he interviews engineers that are just, just recently passed out from colleges, and they won't know simple things as taking measurements using the vernier caliper or the screw gauge, so which is really crazy. And when my son went to an engineering college, he was, he had worked in my husband's workshop where he went on the lathe machines and all of that, so he knew. But his college had like such a small workshop, and it didn't even teach you half the things, and it was all bookish knowledge. So I think that is
That's
need of
important.
our,
Uh, See,
where we
another
need more
feedback we have
practical.
is because shipping is a global profession. It's not limited to a country. So your mastery over a command over the language, and when I say language, it's not grammar and composition, but communication. Command over
Right.
communication is so
Right.
important. How precisely you communicate and how the
Right.
communication differs depending on who you're speaking to. You can't communicate to the prime minister the same way you communicate to your office peon. So these
Right.
are things, this is the feedback. This is an area which we are working on. For example, in the Indian Maritime University, we introduced, due to the pandemic and lockdown, we could not have classes, live classes. So we also introduced one exam paper which said, listen to any webinar, because there were so many webinars in the summer of 2020 with, world leaders talking. We said, listen
Yeah.
to the webinars and then give us a 400-word report on what you learned from it. So
Wow.
this, I thought, enabled them to listen, to comprehend, to internalize, to have clarity of what they learned and express it. And then we randomly picked up some of the better ones and said, okay, why don't you give a seminar, give a talk on for 10, 15 minutes on what you wrote to your classmates. And so this is
Wow.
how you slowly build up communication skills. I think those of us who are fortunate enough to go to good schools and colleges, that's where we have a upper hand in terms of communication, in terms of
Yes.
understanding and communicating. But then nowadays, in the shipping area, unlike your father's times, Deepshika, when they came from the educated elite urban backgrounds, they come from interior areas with very little
Right.
exposure. So they have to be given these skills, handheld, and guided towards this. So we've also tied up with our own alumni, and there is one alumni association which is actually mentoring 30 of our students, so
Oh,
that
wow.
so one-on-one mentoring. So this is going to help
Amazing.
them, do better in interviews and compete better when they go outside.
That is a brilliant idea. That is the need of the hour, practical knowledge and one-on-one mentoring, because
Yeah.
bookish knowledge does not help. Like you said, 15 days out of the, after the exam, you
Yeah.
forget. So that is so true. So you were talking about co-curricular activities back in the day, and you were in the cultural activities, and also what's your favorite uh, co-curricular activities? Like you said, you could, listen to
A
some
lot of
classical
it.
music.
In my early student days, I used to play a lot of sports, netball in particular.
Okay.
I was a school athlete. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, and I learned Bharatanatyam. My parents put me into music and instrumental music and dance. And I
Wow.
can't sing to save my life or to save anybody's life. I was okay with instrument because my sense of rhythm was far better than my sense of tonal listening. I think I'm tone deaf.
Okay.
But I stuck to dance. I loved it.
Okay.
So
Okay.
and so dance and sports. And of late, as time went by, lot of travel. And I love this thing of road less traveled. So you go to small places 2 days at a time.
Right.
And there's so much to discover in India.
Right.
Small, it's just overnight, and a lot of heritage, a lot of beauty. For example, do you know that there are two national marine sanctuaries in the country? There are two
Wow.
national marine sanctuaries, and I
Okay.
happen to know this not by anybody telling me, but I was in an airport looking at a coffee table book that was there on Gujarat, and I looked at it and I said, "Wow!" So I went to this marine sanctuary in Jamnagar because I had half a day to kill before the flight took off. Um,
Huh.
you can go there. You go. There's a guide, and you go there, and he shows you things that you can't see with your eyes. Crabs which are less than 1 centimeter. Yeah,
Wow.
transparent crabs that you can hold in your hand. He picks it up and live sponge. You think sponges, not the synthetic sponge. Sponges
Huh.
grow behind under the rocks there.
Right,
And,
right, right.
and you hold an octopus in your hand and it actually squirts that ink and you know what it is. So things like that actually
Wow.
lighten you up. And not many people know about it, not many people go for it. You can go, everybody goes for a party, everybody goes, let's go to Bushi Dam during the monsoon, let's go to Alibag. But these
Yeah,
roads less traveled in India are fantastic. I
right.
live, yeah.
So probably after you finish with all this, you could start a travel blog. Road less
I,
traveled.
I do it. My Facebook posts. One day I realized, let me see what my Facebook posts are. So I ran through it. I said, I think the government can appoint me as an ambassador for Indian tourism.
Wow, that is so cool. Yes, that would be brilliant.
So many posts of such. Uh, and you have to go there and you look at just one thing. For example, there is this kingdom of Gondal in Gujarat. Okay,
Okay,
and that and in that palace, it's not even a palace. It's turned into it's a guest house turned into a boutique hotel. But outside
okay,
that, there's a little cabin or a carriage. This is the carriage
okay.
that the king of Gondal used then for
Huh.
his journeys, and it's so cute. It's really exquisite and
Beautiful.
quaint. Okay, but the
Right.
other side you understand, and this is something I would have never known except I went there again. I had 3 hours to kill in Rajkot. Somebody said, okay, let's go there. That king in 1920s promoted girls' education, promoted underground trains and underground electrical wiring. So
Wow.
until at the time of independence, that was the only area in the entire state of Gujarat, or then then Bombay state, which had
Okay.
underground wiring. So little vignettes like that which actually inspire you to say, if he could think of it in 1920s, what are we doing in 2020s?
Seriously.
That's what it gives you
Correct.
that spark. And I do write. I used to write quite a bit, not on serious subjects, but actually on these kind of things. Like you go to a forest, go to a sanctuary, don't just look for the tiger. People just
Huh.
say, I saw a tiger, click the tiger, put it on Facebook. I remember one of the first things I saw in a forest when I was posted in this, then what was called Kalapani in Chandrapur, was
Huh.
entering the forest. It was a month of August. They said you will not see any animals in the monsoon period. I said perfectly fine. But I still have in my memory, Deepshika, this spider web which spanned about 20 feet wide and the sun coming from behind it. So the silky
Oh,
web glittering in the sun. And I said, what tiger? This is also beautiful.
absolutely. I can actually imagine that. It must have been so beautiful.
And you're seeing it for the first time and you're just mesmerized by this tiny creature which can actually create this huge pattern,
Huge.
a thing of beauty.
Amazing. Beautiful. So I am, now that we are friends on Facebook also, I'm going to go and stalk all your posts and probably book tickets for these places, because just the other day my daughter was cribbing that your parents took you all over the place, my grandparents, and you guys have not taken us. She was cribbing to Sanjeev and me, so I think I should start now. So yes,
We discovered Gujarat, we discovered Madhya Pradesh, and we discovered Karnataka during our stay in Mumbai. And each one of them is an underrated gem.
absolutely. Yeah. all of them. So when you were an IS officer, how many places were you posted? Because my Tauji was also an IS officer, and I was we've traveled with him a little bit, when he was commissioner of Lucknow, and so we've gone to these little postings. So
Yeah.
how many
Yeah.
places did you
So
go?
I began my training was I belong to the Maharashtra cadre, was allocated Maharashtra cadre. So the first
Okay,
place I saw in Maharashtra when I came from Mussoorie after the training was Nagpur. So I spent a
okay,
year in Nagpur. After that, my very first posting as an independent officer was Wardha. So,
okay,
and it's interesting. Wardha was one of the most literate districts in the state at that time.
okay,
Very tiny one horse town. So really one house, and the strange thing is it's remained pretty much a one house town for over the years,
okay,
and it's become more a satellite of Nagpur. Uh, the next one
okay,
was Chancellor.
okay.
As I said, Kalapani, but so these are the
Yeah.
small places. Then I worked in Mumbai. Mostly it's
Okay.
been Nagpur, Mumbai, Nagpur, and I had a Government of India stint in my own hometown, Chennai.
Okay. Okay.
I,
So
as
cool.
in Special Economic Zone.
All right, that is so cool. So we're almost close to an hour here. So before we hear the final, your final things for our viewers here, I would like to say that everybody that is joining us from Dr. Malini Shankar's side, please follow the Paradigm Shift page, because we bring inspiring people, inspiring stories, their journeys that have made the paradigm shifts in different fields and for the betterment of self and the society. So please follow the page, and we're live on every Wednesdays and Saturdays with amazing content. And everybody that is following, everybody that is here from the Paradigm Shift, you can go stalk Dr. Malini Shankar's page if you guys are interested in the road less traveled, and go look at all all these beautiful small places. Dr. Shankar, tell us, would you have any advice for all the young IS aspirants and people in the maritime industry?
Yeah, for the youth in general, whether they are in maritime or in the IAS, um, I have held one thing, one belief is that follow your heart in the matter of choosing your profession, and do not compete with others. Uh, I know these children come under a lot of peer pressure, a lot of parental pressure saying do this, do that, etc. You can, I know that you cannot break free of that all the time, but once you discover what your heart wants, don't hesitate to follow that path, because I believe that if you do something that you're passionate about, you will succeed. There will be no doubts. I'm
Right.
speaking from my own personal experience of moving from chemistry to administration, and I every time I ask myself, have I regretted it coming back? You're talking about paradigm shift. The biggest decision I made as a 22-year-old was to come back from the US, which
Yeah.
and then people said, oh, she must not have cleared some exam in the US. She came back. She's just telling she's preparing for the exam. But I don't know how, as a youngster, I had this guts to say, yeah, let me try it. And if I don't get it, I'll go back to chemistry. I'm a good chemist and I'll go back to it. But not one day have I regretted it, because I think and today when I look back, I said I couldn't have done better in any other field. So having that passion and following that is the most important thing, whether you're in the IS or whether you're in maritime. Even in maritime, I find if you have come because an agent has enticed you, or somebody has said this gives you a lot of money, and if you feel your heart is not in it, I would say don't hesitate to find something else where your heart is in. For
Right.
specifically for the IS aspirant, as I said, don't compare, don't compete. Just do what you have to do, but focus on concepts, focus on clarity of thinking and clarity of expression, and that will stand you in good stead not only in the UPSC exam, but in case you don't opt for it, it will stand you in good stead for any profession that you take up in the future.
Amazing. This
And
is
don't
such
forget your extracurricular activities. Don't
yes.
ever forget that. You
Dance,
know what I
music,
used to
sports, and films.
you know what I used to do? we're talking about early days. Letter writing was one of my hobbies, and my father told me, "I will pay for your education, but I can't pay for your letters." He very jokingly told me this. it, bo-
Oh
it,
my
forms,
God.
it forms friendships. It does form
Right.
friendships. And your
Absolutely.
friends hold you into it. I remember writing a letter to a schoolmate of mine, classmate from school. And she said,
Mhm.
Malini, I don't want an essay. I want to know what you are doing there in the US, what you feel like. And she nudged me into, better letter writing. So if
Oh
ever I
my.
write a book, it will be in the form of letters, I think.
This is so beautiful. Very nice. So, thank you so much, Dr. Malini Shankar. It has been such a pleasure, such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And we hope to see you more on the paradigm shift in different, in different roles. And I wish you all the best for all the changes that you're making. And I hope all our viewers are completely inspired by all the lovely advice that you have given them. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much, Deepika. I hope they enjoyed it as much as I did. It was
Yes.
fantastic talking to you. Okay?
The comments are already there. There is Kuljit Anand saying, Malini ji, as usual, pleasure to hear you. Seema Sodi, pleasure to hear you. Sanjeev Mehra, namaste. Jayashri Ravi, so proud of you, dear Shankar Malini. How true, Mona Rathore and Atul, namaste. So
Okay.
thank you, thank you so much,
Thank you
and
so much.
have a great week ahead.
You too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.